Yes, so thank you for organizing such a nice conference. As was mentioned, I'm the first time here, and I have been impressed so far. So let's start. The title of the talk is What About Compliance? And I had questions of what does this mean? And it is more like an internal, let's say, joke, so it is a punchline. So hopefully at the end of the talk, it will make more sense to you than it makes now. And what I actually want to say is that there is an apparent conflict between like being compliant and maintaining a high velocity. And I'm going to share a bit of experiences of how I have solved it and how this can serve as an inspiration for you. So a bit about myself. I'm based in Finland. I moved there in 2001. I have been most of the time working with Nokia. So I joined Nokia in the heyday. So when it was like the shining star of the technology space, have seen it go up, down in several ways. I have been mainly in doing software. So my activities were related to software in product organizations and in research organizations. This is how I got back to school in a way, and got a PhD in software systems. And during the last years at Nokia, I have been working with medical software and had to face this problem of documentation that is created to be compliant. And right now I'm with this company Compliance Pal, and what we try to do is to help other companies take this journey of making documentation that is required by regulation easy. So, there are many areas where compliance, you hear the word compliance, but for the purpose of this talk, it will be about in the medical field. And the medical field, or the practice in medical field, used to happen till recently in hospitals only, or in spaces that are like specially made so that doctors, practitioners can perform these activities. And the medical devices are the typical devices that you see in the hospital, wards, wherever, that help doctors to do their duties, and they are typically expensive. They are used for very long time intervals. They are well tested. So typically they are done in, let's say, waterfall fashion. So they have very strict process of making them. So they start with requirements and they go through implementation, testing, documentation. Everything is explicit, and in the end, you have a product that can go and be used by practitioners. Over the years, as the electronics become smaller, you have more and more devices like these ones. So I have seen that quite many people, they have smart devices that collect information about, biometrics about the person that wears it. And because they are attached we wear them all the time, so they have quite a lot of information, or they are able to capture a lot of information that you are not able to do it when you go to see a doctor. Because there you go for a short interval, it's like during the visit, they might make a referral for you to go to some specialist, but problems are rarely observed during this interval. And when we are talking about these devices, is not just this one. This one is connected to a phone. The phone uploads the data to a cloud. Then there are analytics that perform some algorithms on extract information, create new information, and finally there is a user interface that is used. So the whole chain becomes like, instead of having a physical device, you have the surface area that needs to be compliant with the regulation becomes much, much harder. So this is not a new thing. So the role of the software in products is part of the, so the increased role of the software in products is part of a mega trend. So this is a quote for Mark Andreessen. So in short, software is eating the world. So, and this happens in basically in all industries. And the answer of having to deal with more software is agile software development. And this practice like facilitates like fast iterations, and at times there might be, let's say, conflicts between the things that you try to achieve versus the speed at which you try to achieve, and things get dropped, deprioritized. So when we're talking the documentation, so in my experience, we have been using modern documentation tools. So APIs documented with Swagger, code documented with JSDoc or JavaDoc. There are tools that facilitate creating websites or the documentation automatically. Having a DevOps culture allow you to create this documentation in an automatic fashion. So as you progress, you get to, you have the documentation by having tools that create this documentation. And you do this documentation for several reasons. So you have different shareholders in a project, and each they have different expectations. And documentation serves as a communication medium between these entities. So I'm listing here some of the stakeholders. So developers are recipients of documentation, or personas that will read the documentation, designers, architects, management, system administrators, end users. And every persona here has a different need. And if you want to have documentation for everyone to cover all these personas as you want, you end up with a considerable effort. And one thing that is typically overlooked, because developers are the new stars of these days, so they can move from one project to another. So they have a lot of, let's say, freedom. So they move from one project to another, but they don't become aware, or they don't have time to become aware with what are the constraints of making software in particular domains. And they are not aware about what are the standards and the regulations that govern the activity that a business, so if you want to run a business, you need to comply with. And as such, we have a new persona that we need to create documentation for, and they are the auditors. And basically, they are the bodies that make sure that the legal framework and the regulations in an existing territory have to be are followed by the players that are in this area. So we are talking here about medical software, and there are two major regulations. So one is Health Insurance and Portability and Accountability Act, which is valid in United States. And this is a funny regulation because it was created in 1996. And at that time, the internet was an experimental thing, or this kind of electronic, the electronic medium was not as widespread as today, so there might have been some internal, or for sure there were internal systems, but the purpose of this is not, the purpose of this regulation is that because the way healthcare is done in US, you have different providers, so the regulator wanted to be sure that you can move from one to another. And this regulation defines what is personal health information, which describes what is the information that is used during the consultation, or I don't know now a better term for it, and related, all the related data that these decisions are based to, what kind of billing they have done, and administrative things. And they are important because if you want to move from one provider to another, you need to take this body of data and transfer it somehow to the new system, and everything should work. And because it was done before internet existed, or okay, HTML was like in some circles, like Google didn't exist at that time, so you can imagine where it's a travel in time. And it is written in such a way that it is valid over long periods of time. So the language that they have used, which is a legal language, as the society progresses and the meaning of the words change, it evolves. And now you need to be able to map what these people meant back in the day in 1996 to what you have to do these days. In Europe, situation is a bit different. So there is the GDPR, which basically so in US, this is an industry specific. This is only for the health related. In Europe, there is GDPR, which basically is a general regulation that tells you how you handle data, user data, regardless of what is your field, your domain. And yeah, more than that is, on top of that comes the medical device regulation, which describes like how medical devices, they have to behave. And again, this is some, the original one was like from early 2000. This is new, and it will come in effect quite soon. And there is a grace period of 3 years, like in which you have to implement all the provisions that are in this field. So, because as I mentioned, HIPAA and MDR are legal frameworks. So, is legislation which is intended to be valid for a long period of time. And because the authorities, they still, or the regulatory body, or not the regulatory, legal bodies, they still need businesses to do business, yeah, to be able to be compliant. There are regulations, there are standards that define or describe how this legal framework can be implemented in something that is can be followed and implemented in a technical sense. And there are two standard bodies that work in this area, and the members of these standard bodies are governments. So the governments have experts that are sent there, and they agree, discuss, they agree how to implement the frameworks. And there are three standards listed here. They are all harmonized standards, which means that if you follow them, you can operate both in USA and in Europe and be compliant with these parts of the field. So the three standards are, like, I will start with the bottom, so this ISO 14971, which describes medical devices, and it is like, applications of risk management to medical devices, and it describes or defines a formula of so you go from situations that can happen to the probability of that situation happening and turning into something that is dangerous for the human, and then how you are going to handle the situation in practical terms to address it. The other standard, the 13485, is about medical devices and quality management system. So what they are interested with this one is that you are able to create or to do your software or products in a repeatable way and to obtain the quality that is desired. It's kind of simple, but it requires some work to have it done. And the last one, which in a way is the thicker and the one that has the most practical consequences for the development process, is the medical device software, and this describes like the software lifecycle process, and it starts with what is the intended purpose of the device. So let's say a blood pressure monitor is used to measure blood and not other things. How do you determine the features that this product will have? How you translate them into technical requirements, how the technical requirements are implemented, and then how do you verify that you have implemented what you have asked for. Further, because it's a life cycle standard, it asks you as a manufacturer to say how you are handling changes. So whenever somebody reports an error with the device, with the system, how do you take that feedback into account and how you turn it into the end product? And these are things that have to be documented, because the auditors are not that much interested into how you implemented it, but that you follow a process that is correct in their view. So the thoroughness of how you handle things. Risk analysis. So I will spend a couple or more minutes on the risk analysis and management. So we are talking about software. The software has faults, and so even if you know that or know that statistically it happens, so it will fail, and you need to perform activities that will follow thoroughly, like how your software is going to fail, and how do you manage the situations in which the software fails so that you don't end up with a risk to the patient. So I mentioned this a bit before. So during the normal operations, things can happen. This is both to the way the device is operated, the way the software runs, and the hazards are the situations that can happen. So you need to go through to analyze how the device will be used in the field and what are all possible things that can happen. And then some of these things are not really an issue. So there is a weight factor that you as a manufacturer, you decide what is the weight factor. Then you assess if this turns into a risk. Is this going to have some effects or not? And then you need to document how you are handling the risk. So it can be, there are procedures that the personnel have to use. There are mitigations that are in software. So the software itself handles errors, recovers from that, and so on. And yeah. So you end up with the because you perform the risk analysis, and the standard will tell you that after the analysis there are 3 outcomes. So the software can be in one of these classes. So it is like in class A there is no injury. So nothing will happen if in that risk category, and the standard that does not require design documentations and testing. This doesn't stop you to have them, but the standard does not require it. So the auditors will not be interested in you. Then there is the situation in which non-serious injury can happen, and this is like in this situation you need to have design documentation and testing. And the last one, which is the most serious, is that using that device can lead to death or serious injury. For example, this kind of pumps that control how much drugs are administered. So those are very dangerous because there is no way to react if they do something. So they lead to death. So you need to have the products very, very thoroughly tested, and also you need to have design documents and so on. So the software, the software surface is quite large, and the standard always, or as a manufacturer nowadays, it is highly unlikely that you'll use software that is entirely built by your organization. So any software that was not done according to this process, regardless of how good it is, like the Linux kernel, the Apache Kafka, and so on, it is considered software of unknown provenance, and you need to make an assessment of how that software was developed, and again, like what are the risks, like if you use that internally, what are the hazards in which that can turn to risks, and how you are mitigating them. Now we are back to the developers. So in most cases, compliance skills and the development team, so they don't share any of these skills. So there are cases when it happens, and those people are actually lucky, but in most cases it's just like a free ride, and then the question, what about compliance, will turn like the smile into a grin. And because of this, so any compliance activities are, like in the development team, there will be friction there. So people will not want to do it, they will resist, they will go to another project or whatever. So they take easy way out or not, I don't know how to say. And if you continue on that, you end up with, because the documentation needs to happen. So you cannot take the product to market if there is no documentation. And you end up with this, what is called like a documentation sprint. In reality, is more like software archaeology. So you go into version control and you look there what happens, why it happened, who has done it. So who knows what will happen. And this is, again, like something that is general. So as you moved from waterfall style project management, where things were defined, and over time, the people involved, they just do things. When you move into the agile, where the backlog has priority, you need to change the mindset from tasks that are implicitly performed to tasks that are explicitly scheduled. Otherwise, there is no time to do all these activities, and you end up with the documentation sprint. So how to do that? So the soft way would be that, as I'm having here, you just tell them that docs or it didn't happen. Nicer would be to give them the sticker itself, which I will do. But there are also harder ways to tell to relevant people what is happening. And this is a real case. So this is Fresenius Medical Care. So it's a big US provider in the healthcare. And the important thing is where the arrow points there. So the font is a bit small, but is, so they have been, so this is a settlement for them violating, and in the text it is like continuous violation of risk analysis and risk management rules demanded by HIPAA. And the penalty is $3.5 million. And if you go into this, most likely there are other violations that other auditors that are not HIPAA, interested in HIPAA, they will want to look into what you do. So going back to this, that you need to explicitly schedule activities to make documentation. This ends like being able to schedule them allows you have time to build tools, you have time to automate. Whenever you have learned something, you make a tool, you save time. Later, you don't have to do it by hand or manually. And these are some advices, like in practice, like what we are doing, is that we try to bring these compliance activities into the agile practices. And the risk management, the risk analysis and management. So let's say traditionally, these people that know about compliance, they are either consultants that come up later, or they are internal, but again, like they are corporate. You don't have all the time access to them. But what you can do to improve the visibility is if the development team is using Jira, for example, as issue management tool, have these people use the same tool. So it will help, they will bring them together. In the traceability and verification, so this is the issue of you start with requirements, you implement them, you test them. Have them in tools that have APIs so that you can query them and you can make reports and you can track them as they are in. So the requirements to where the code is, so you link that in, and then in the test you link with where the code is coming from, so that you can make automated reports and you don't have to dig into there or make guesswork. And then in the end, compliance checks. So for example, this SOUP verification is a very effective way to bring the developers like immediately, like they commit new code, you can check and you see what they have done. You explain what is the situation. Compliance officers, they can look into the issue and they can give advice. And because it's very late and I have only 2 minutes, so what I'm trying to say here is that, okay, a naive would say that, or let's say an arrogant, but there will be never enough time or never enough resources to make this process great again. So, and I'm talking, when I say make documentation, I'm talking about the process, not the content of the documentation, because that can be done nicely. And I think that being an optimist, I want to see the empty or the full part of the glass, and that would be the message. Like, make the documentation suck less, and yes, automate, make do computers do what they are good, allow people to concentrate on tasks that create more value. What else can I say? Be kind to others in this process. In the end, is the whole, so everybody is in the same bucket. So there is no like glory in being the last man standing here. And this is all. If you have any further questions, I'll be outside and available here. And I'm hoping that what about compliance makes you think about these things, because as more or businesses are not like a good example is like this mess with Facebook. It will not go like this. There will be regulations. So typically companies try to self-regulate, but there will be always a bad player. So know beforehand what are the constraints in which you operate. And thank you.